All right, now that it's recording, I'll say something dumb. No, really, thank you, Steve. I wanted to say, this meetup's been really great for me. I've been attending for a long time. Probably wouldn't be giving a talk if I didn't attend this as often. So, um, really take advantage for those who are joining for the first time. So many great, really nice people that want to collaborate. Um, Give me one second. All right. Can everyone see the slides? Sweet. All right. Like Steve said, my name is Kody Fintak. I'm a technical coach, code crafter. And the talk today that I'm going to talk about, it's about a blog post I wrote earlier, but this is about trunk-based ping pong, a collaborative programming style that incentivizes taking small steps together that I discovered with my friend, my coworker, Brett Schuart. Before we get started too, what I wanted to say was this talk would really suck if it was just me talking the whole time. So there's going to be some questions I'm going to ask. Feel free to just shout them out. Feel free to type them into chat. I'll probably have that open. And Steve, if I miss something and there's something interesting, feel free to pull that out. What else was I going to say? Yeah, and if there's any questions, just like while the talk's going on, there's going to be a QA section at the end of the talk after an hour. But I would love to just, if there's anything that I can't understand this, let's talk about it now. Feel free to ask. So let's get started. One thing I wanted to show was I have a QR code here that links to the actual slide deck along with some of the resources and references that are called out in the talk. I'm going to show this at the end of the talk as well. Learn this trick from Llewellyn. But feel free to snag this or wait till the end. So I think to begin the talk, we're going to open our minds a bit and we're going to look at some ladders. So everybody, what ladder would you rather climb? Feel free to
Small
shout it out
steps.
into chat or go ahead.
Small steps.
The one on the left, because there's smaller steps, right?
Neither, unless I had full protection.
There's safety involved with the one on the left, right? If you look on the right one, actually the scale of the person, they are actually reaching up and they're still not even touching the first leg. So it looks like they're going to have to like run up the wall a bit just to get access to that.
I think his answer was neither. They look pretty tall.
Yeah, they're over. Once you're over 6 feet, OSHA says you need full protection.
That's true. This is not. Yeah, this talk is not OSHA certified, but that's okay. But yeah, on the left, things are a lot safer. So this came from a post I saw on LinkedIn from Dragon, and there was a comment that I really like. I don't remember who said it, but they said slow equals steady, and steady equals fast. So really at the right here, think about, or actually before we do that, think about which one of these ladders looks like the way your organization develops software. What types of what kinds of practices do we think we would see if we were writing software like the ladder on the right? What are some things we'd observe? Personally, I think we would see huge PRs, maybe 2,000, 3,000 line long PRs. We would see Hail Mary releases where this has to get, we have to release this now. We can't slip this date. We also, I see this as each step being a form of feedback. We have to, we're delaying getting feedback until we've taken this giant step. So this right ladder is what I like to call biting more than you can chew. So I'm going to share just a story that, again, a little bit more in detail for that, but maybe more on a micro level. So let's say we are writing some code together and we're trying to change some behavior on a method on a class. We go to open up the test file and, we're doing TDD and phew, good thing we got a test. So at least we're not starting from zero. We start to read a couple of the tests, and we notice 2 of the tests above actually are identical setups to what we want. So we think, oh, we should parameterize this so we don't have to rewrite the test, so we don't have to cause duplication. So, okay, before we add the behavior, we start parameterizing, and then we're reading we're touching the code. So we look at the class name and we say, actually, as a team, we move from calling these classes from being DAO objects to maybe repository objects, a new team standard. So, okay, let's update the name. And then, oh, actually, now that we've got the class open, I realize these method names are kind of out of date. We should do this. And also, why are they all taking in the same first parameter of the table name? Can't that go in the constructor? And this kind of goes on for a couple hours. And next thing you know, you've got this giant ball of mud, giant step commit. And it may make the code base better. All the things you're talking about probably will make it better, but it's very unsafe. It's all or nothing step. So because of that, you better hope that the build passes, all the tests pass when we do this. We hope that we get no comments on our PRs if we're doing those. And the other thing is, I know that Billy over there was working with this class for something else. So we better get this in before he integrates his changes, so he's going to have to deal with the merge conflict. So there's a mantra that Michael Feathers calls out in this book, Working Effectively with Legacy Code, that programming is the art of doing one thing at a time. And if there's anything you get out of this talk, is this quote. And we need to keep, and what I want to say is, like, keeping our focus on one thing takes discipline. This is why TDD works so well for me. Beforehand, I was changing a billion things, but now instead, write the test, see it fail, write the simplest thing that'll make it pass, and then do a little bit of refactoring. And that's a discipline. TDD is a discipline, and keeping our focus on one thing's a discipline. And discipline takes practice. But the one thing that's really useful when we're working collaboratively is we can help hold each other to the disciplines that we agree to. So we can, while we're mobbing, we'll say, somebody in the mob can say, oh, actually, what are we doing? And I'll say, oh, we're changing the method of this class, but also we're parameterizing this test. And as soon as you hear that word "and," we know we're doing more than one thing. Hey, let's try to only do one of those things. Integrate it and then move on. So we need to be taking our work and doing smaller things. We need to make the work we do smaller. So this applies to basically all of the pieces that us as developers will work on, right? So releases should be smaller. We should be getting faster feedback from our customers that we're doing the right thing. Stories should be smaller. The actual things that we're shipping, incremental pieces should be smaller. Deployments should be smaller. We should be doing that hopefully multiple times a day, getting feedback that our code hasn't broken anything in production. Integration, taking our individual pieces of code as a team and integrating them together. Avoiding merge hell, as I like to call it. And then same thing with commits and code. We can be working on smaller bits. For this talk, what trunk-based ping pong is kind of related to is the bottom 4. Releasing and stories, there's a ton of great talks and blog posts about that. We're not going to talk about that. But we're going to start off with going down to that level of the code in the commit. So we're going to talk about a technique called micro commits. This is a technique that Tim Ottinger, I think he's the one who made the term. So micro commits themselves are what we call one small step. It's a tiny commit that does one tightly scoped change. You might ask what this looks like. So an example can be we extract method total tax on cart. Just an automated refactoring. We go from green to green. We ran the test. We can integrate this. We can deploy this. Add gap spacing between items on cart. Maybe a style change. -R, rename variable subtotal. This one shows a commit notation, Arlo's commit notation, which I know a lot of folks in this community like. I like Arlo's commit notation as well. And his notation, there's also this concept. It kind of goes, again, hand in hand with small steps. It's a notation about risk. And each change should ideally only change be one small step change of the system because it's less risky. And another thing to call out, I'm saying tiny. I think to really define that though, I'm not really saying like you should be as small as possible, but sometimes a single step maybe creates a large code change. So for example, if you were to run the formatter on your code base, say you update the formatting rules, that could be a 10,000 line long code change. I would still say that's a single step because you've just ran the formatter, seen the new changes, push. Now, you definitely shouldn't do that while other people are working on the code base. Usually the team comes together, we do that, and then we split back up. But it's about the single step. Before I even knew what micro commits were, that term, I was already kind of doing this as part of my TDD cycle. So showing what that is, we go from red to green to refactor to integrate. And the integration point is us, running git commit and pushing. So with this, I'm typically committing every 2 to 5 minutes. I would say on average from that math, then I'm usually making about 12 commits an hour in my typical TDD workflow. So a nice parallel to this, here's a screenshot from Baldur's Gate 3, a very fantastic video game about Dungeons and Dragons that everyone should play if you're into video games. This is a room pretty early on in Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm not spoiling nothing, don't worry. But if you go in this room and you're looting everything, because there's a lot of cool stuff in some of the chests, and then you go into this very unsuspicious coffin in the center of the room and click on it, and you didn't save before you clicked on it, well, you messed up. When you're playing video games, how much does it suck when you do a bunch of stuff and then die or whatever, and now you have to reload a save and it's been 30 minutes since you saved? So micro commits, Tim Ottinger likes to use this term that it's equivalent to saving your game. In these big RPGs, I usually keybind the save button because I hate having to redo things that I did. So I do this, there's a term called save scumming. So I'm like, I loot a chest, do a couple things, F4, save. Walk over here, oh, beat one enemy, okay, save. Software works the same way. How much does it suck when you have hundreds of lines changed, maybe we'll say 600 lines. You run the tests and they're failing. And you haven't ran them in the last hour. Well, what change broke the test? One of the 600 lines. So, then you go into the debug world, which really is the biggest time sink most developers spend, because you could be doing that forever. You don't know when you're done debugging. There's tools about being more effective with it, but the best amount of time of debugging is 0. So micro commits are like saving our game. Because of that, it's very easy to go back to a state of the software working. We're only ever 2 to 5 minutes ahead of where we were. And just like how I have another keybind for quick reloading in my games, I have a similar thing with coding. And that is the beautiful git reset hard. And for those who live in Seattle, you probably recognize this photo. This is Crystal Lake, I believe. I took this during a hike. But git reset hard. If you don't run this once a day, you should try running this more often. It is liberating. It allows me to innovate, to try some new ideas. Because of it, there's a bunch of people in this meetup. I'm going to call you out. Adam, Paige, and Steve. They say that I have this technique that I like to call throwing spaghetti at the wall. Because of Git Reset Hard, I love trying terrible ideas and seeing where they go, and knowing that with just one quick keystroke, I can just go back to green. If 1 out of 10 of those crazy ideas work out, that's awesome. That's true innovation. So going back to this though, as soon as we do have that cool idea that okay, this is good, we want this, it should be deployable. Kind of already said this before, but micro commits should be deployable. It's that after the green step in TDD. So because of this, the work in progress code we have is only the last 2 to 5 minutes it changes. And going back to it, each commit being deployable, I'm saying that word, not releasable, because there's times where we're working on things where we're working on some new behavior change. We can't release that maybe to customers yet. So to work in small steps like this, we need to use some techniques to separate the deployability of our software and the releasability of the features in our software. And this is where there's some techniques such as feature flags, which are probably the more popular one, but the one that I actually prefer is don't wire the thing up until you're ready to release it, which is the simpler option. If you're doing something like TDD inside out, this is basically you wire the UI, the button press at the last step of wanting the feature to go live. You can always wire that up, test it, and then unwire it locally if you want. So this sounds very similar to the technique that's directly in the name of the practice we're going to talk about later, trunk-based ping pong, which is trunk-based development. So by having it so every commit is deployable and we've separated the deployability and releasability, it enables us to do this practice. So trunk-based development, I'm going to read a definition off trunkbaseddevelopment.com, which is a fun little website that kind of describes it with some photos. So they call it a source control branching model where developers collaborate on code in a single branch called trunk and resist any pressure to create other long-lived development branches by employing documented techniques such as feature flags. They therefore avoid merge hell, they don't break the build, and they live happily ever after. Every commit on trunk should be deployable. By treating that as a team, as a discipline, that, hey, every commit we're writing is deployable. How do we know what version we can release? Whatever the latest version on trunk is the thing we're going to release. It's so much easier to do releases because of that. So we may create short-term branches. For example, there's been times where I've had to update a framework and that takes forever. So for example, if you've done React, you update React framework and every single dependency also might have to get upgraded. So, okay, we might create a short-term branch for a day or two just to deal with all that nonsense. Because if we did it right on trunk, we would break everything. However, this goes back to the discipline part. We should be constantly asking ourselves, how can we break this up so we don't have to branch? So, micro commits, developers integrate. We also integrate each other's changes every 2 to 5 minutes. We're pushing our changes to trunk every 2 to 5 minutes. And from experience, this basically not 100% eliminates, but like 99% eliminates merge hell or any merges whatsoever. And merge hell sucks. To share a fun story about what not to do, there was a situation that I was working on at one point where there was a decision to kind of create a team that wasn't going to integrate any of their changes, but we're going to completely branch off of main, and they waited 6 months to integrate their changes. And because of how often the main team refactored, they basically had the branch of integrating they called it steering clear of pain. And I think I've already shared this story actually at this meetup, but it's somebody's job was every morning they had to pull the latest changes from main into steering clear of pain and deal with hundreds of lines of merge conflicts. It was awful. So micro commits, trunk-based development, it enables true continuous integration. Let's read like the original. I don't know if this is the original definition of continuous integration, but it's from the C2 wiki. And I really like this definition. So this says development teams use code ownership to minimize conflicts among people editing. The longer engineers hold onto modules or just new code, the more important it is to minimize conflicts. What if engineers didn't have to hold on to modules for more than a moment? What if they made their correct change and presto, everyone's computer updated instantaneously? You would never have integration hell because the system would always be integrated. You wouldn't need code ownership because there wouldn't be any conflicts to worry about. With micro commits and trunk-based development, this is the closest I've seen this, and I've experienced this on multiple teams, multiple projects. All right, left field change. What is the hardest part of TDD, everybody? Shout it out. Throw it into chat. The other person.
Naming things.
Naming things. What else? What are some other harder parts of TDD?
Oh, naming things, I think, really outshines everything else.
Spelling
Jay
it.
said at least what I think the hardest part of TDD is, which is the first test. What is the first test we should write? And it's not even the writing of it. That's the second hardest thing I would say. The first hardest thing is what is the first test?
Hmm.
And spelling it. Okay, so same thing, same question. What is the hardest part of working in smaller steps?
Figuring out that next step.
Figuring out the next step. Exactly. This is hard. Even with practice, it still is difficult and requires some experimentation. And because it's hard, we as humans are lazy and also go with the current. We'll do the simplest thing we can do. So it kind of goes back to discipline. And this is why collaborative programming, I love it. Because we can ask each other in the mob questions like this. Hey, are we only working on one thing right now? Is there a smaller step we can take? Is there a way we can actually take this change we're trying to make and make it deployable so we don't have to branch? Even when working on these collaborative teams where we all value taking smaller steps, we sometimes will fall into taking big steps. That's just part of it. What is the quote I'm looking for? In doing the work, we discover the work. I miss saying it. Someone will probably say it better in chat. But that's a Woody Zool quote that I really enjoy. And I think that plays into a lot of times you take the big step and you're like, oh, I know how we could have broken this up. So incentives play a big role in how we act, though. If the environment makes it easier for us to take small steps, we'll be taking more small steps. To kind of show that a little bit more, I'm going to tell a story about a team I was on. And this is not the team. This is a photo from Agile Open Northwest. So I'm glad, Steve, you plugged this earlier. This was this year's Agile Open Northwest, and we were, oh yeah, thumbs up. And we were all coding every night or in the evening after the conference. It was super fun. So go to Agile Open Northwest next year. Join the mob. It's super fun. If you've never mobbed before too, it's a great place to experience that. But the team I was working with, we had 20 XP developers. We all were doing TDD. We all agreed with basically the same ways of working, a lot of the things we talk about in this community and also experiment with. We were working remote, so we had to decide how we were going to mob. And there was a lot of us too, so we were also multi-mobbing, where maybe there was groups of 3 to 5 people in this mob, 2 to 3 in this mob, or maybe we would go together to one mob. But we dynamically reteamed. I know there's a lot to say about that. We'll push that aside just for context. So we had to decide how we were going to remotely share screen or basically write code together. So we started off with our favorite tool that a lot of people in this community like and that I love, MobSH. So MobSH, for those who haven't used it, it's a command line tool for fast Git handover for remote pair mob programming. It makes it dead simple to remotely mob. There's just basically two commands you got to learn. And for those who haven't used the tool, we're going to walk through how it works. So let's say we have a pair, Carl and Maria. Carl is the first typist or driver, shares their IDE over, let's say, Zoom, and creates the mob session. So that looks like this. They'll basically run mob start. And what that does is it actually creates a remote branch that's off of the branch they were on. So let's say, our team was doing trunk-based development, so we were on main. So it would create a branch called mob main. However, again, we had multi-mobs, so we can't all be on mob main. So that's where the second part of the command comes in, where you can run this instead. Mob start -b changes the branch name, so we can effectively do this separately. So we would run mob start -b cart total, or the thing we're working on. So let's say Maria's navigating Carl, and also the great part about MobSH is it creates a timer. The timer, I think it's configured at 10 minutes by default, but you can modify it. That'll actually play a sound on your computer when it's time to rotate, which is really fun. So let's say Maria's navigating Carl and it goes Mer, which is the default thing it says. Okay, we got to rotate. So Carl would then run mob next. And what this does then is takes all the local changes, puts them into a commit with the message called whip, I believe, and then pushes that to that remote branch. Maria then will run the same mob start command that Carl ran, and it'll go to that, basically check out the branch, and she'll have those changes. So dead simple. And then when Carl's navigating Maria, they're ready to actually integrate their change. Maria will then run mob done. It'll destroy that remote branch, take her back to wherever, whatever branch they were on, so main, and then they can commit and push their changes normally. The mob SH, awesome tool. Honestly, the default that I usually go to when trying to do remote mobbing, because it's just so easy. However, with our team, we were trying to do a lot of small steps. So let's say, what if we wanted to commit a change before that first rotation timer's up? So again, rotation timers may be set to 10 minutes, and we've did a quick refactor, and we actually want to integrate. This is what that would look like. We would have started the branch. We would have then had to run mop done and commit. Not a ton of extra steps, but there is an extra step. Because we had to remember what branch we were on, like mob start -B, we had to check that out. And then we also had to run mob done. These 2 extra steps kind of disincentivized us sometimes from actually going and integrating. There were times where, you know what, let's just keep going. And then what would happen would be the timer would go up and maybe we were halfway through a refactor. And, oh, okay, well, this is broken code, so we can't integrate yet. We should still rotate because we're trying to rotate on a timer. So, okay, we'll rotate. That'll keep going on. And 30 minutes later, we're like, wait, didn't we want to integrate this? And this isn't that big of a deal. Again, I feel like most folks writing code are integrating way less than what we were trying to do. But even with us having the smaller mob sizes or multiple mobs and trying to integrate often, we sometimes ran into merge conflicts because, again, the mob tool works on remote branches. Because of that, we're not integrating from main as often as we usually would if we were just committing small commits right to main. What did happen a couple times was, say we were working and this happened where we kept kind of just rotating and we should have integrated. 30 minutes later, we're like, okay, let's integrate. Push. Oh, wait, there's a merge conflict. Oh, it looks like this mob over here did the same exact refactor that we did, but I kind of like our version better. But now all of our changes are blocked because we've got this merge conflict. 30 minutes isn't a long time, but if we were to not have remote branches, we would have known immediately that we were trying to do the same refactor. And what we did in that case then was take the 2 mobs and become 1 mob. So mob SH tool, awesome. Not trying to diss it or anything here, but that was some problems we ran into using it. So we experimented and tried what is basically what mob tool's doing, but we just did it manually, which is what's called more git handoff. So when it's time to rotate, the last driver will commit, push their changes to trunk. The next driver then will pull it down. So with this, we sometimes used a timer. Sometimes we didn't. There wasn't really any strict, okay, are we ready to commit? That kind of led back to the discipline. A lot of times we did still have this nice 2 to 5 minute, 5 to 10 minute commit period where then we were pushing trunks. Sometimes we didn't. And sometimes it would go on for almost an hour and a half because going back to the biting more than we can chew, took this ginormous step. And because of the sunk cost of us having this code that we want to get merged in, even though it's broken, we would keep going. And because of that, we didn't break as often as we used to. With Mob SH, I found it really easy to add the Pomodoro style breaks in because you have this nice 10-minute timer, 10-minute timer, 10-minute timer break or whatever. So we had to constantly ask ourselves, okay, should we rotate or should we keep going? Should we rotate or should we keep going? And that's what the is here. And this still, again, worked a lot. However, and actually, sorry, because of that, there was a practice that emerged from it. One day, me and Brett Schuart were pairing one day. He was part of the team. And we sort of found ourselves in this flow state as we were writing code. We were rotating constantly back and forth while pushing code effortlessly to production. And it looked like this. Brett, and also we were working on just like some small feature, but Brett wrote a test. He made it pass. We then integrated right there, and then we rotated. I grabbed screen share over Zoom. And then I refactored, maybe did a rename. I integrated, and then I rotated. He grabbed screen share. He then maybe extracted a method, refactor, integrated, then rotated. After about 2 hours, and kind of feeling this energy, one, we realized we were going for so long, so we were like, we should take a break. After we came back from the break and let our subconscious kind of reflect on what was going on, we realized this felt kind of different than the way we normally were writing with Git handoff. And that's why we called it trunk-based ping pong. Because we were effortlessly ping-ponging code changes right to trunk. Every commit we were working on was able to go directly to trunk. Defining trunk-based ping pong then. So we can rotate anytime we can commit and push our changes to trunk. So we take the rotation mechanism, instead of it being based on a timer, or instead of us remembering to do it, we're saying, okay, we're green, we're going to commit and integrate to get back to that true definition of continuous integration. This does assume we're working in small steps. Otherwise, if we're working in big steps, that means we're rotating like every, let's say an hour or two if you're taking giant steps. And that's terrible. We want to have small rotations to keep engagement, to keep it so everybody's hands on the keyboard, so everybody gets an opportunity. Yeah, one commit a day is exactly what we don't want. So to show what this looks like, the micro commit TDD circle here, it's the same thing, but now on that integration step, that's when we're rotating. And usually what this looked like was more like this diagram, where we went from red to green, integrated, which meant we pushed to trunk, and rotated. Refactor, integrate, rotate, refactor, integrate, rotate, and then maybe red, green, and it continues. So with this practice, the question that's come up from the folks that have tried this, people have asked, how many steps should I take before rotating? Because sometimes the refactors that you do may be super small, like a rename. I run the automated refactoring tool rename. That was less than a second. Do I really need to rotate? And I think at first, as a deliberate practice, yeah, try it first, sticking to that one commit per rotation. After a couple rotations as a team, then you can experiment. I'll say with the times that I've done this practice, or when we've used it, which I just used it the other day, we typically, especially with the smaller refactorings, we'll batch a couple of them up, maybe 2 or 3, kind of keeping it to the spirit of we want to be rotating every 2 to 5 minutes. And so yeah, I mean, that's the technique. And I'm a big believer of show rather than tell. I know I've been talking a lot. So instead now let's actually see this practice in action. So Adam and Paige here are gonna do trunk-based ping pong with Steve Quo's favorite kata, the one kata to rule them all, FizzBuzz. And for those who don't know the rules of FizzBuzz, I ripped this from my coworker, John Reed. Basically given a number, 1 through 100. If the number is divisible by 3, so it would be fizz. So 1, If the number is not, for 1, it'd be 1. For 2, it'd be 2. For 3, it'd be fizz. For 4, it's there. 5 is buzz. 6 is fizz because it's divisible by 3. So this is a great diagram. But anyways, we're going to do fizz buzz now. I want to stop sharing my screen. And I'll answer some questions while they get started, I think.
But
If there's
Adam,
anything.
do you want to navigate or drive first?
Let's try navigate first.
Oh, I see how it is.
You're more likely to have the share permissions than me, so we'll see what happens there.
Okay. I'm just gonna go here and rerun my test. And just so we know, I'm going to pull. Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
So it looks like we have the 2 case, but not the 1 case. So maybe we should let's make a test of should return 1 for 1. We can make a new fizzbuzz class and assert that 1 after we pass the string value of 1 after we pass in the process of 1. Just kind of looking at the test above.
Like that?
Yeah, you got it.
Boom. Fail and test.
Wah, wah.
So if we're following the simplest code, would it be adding an if statement? If input is equal to 1, return 1, otherwise return 2?
Do you want me to do that here?
Yes, please.
This is an example of simplest possible. What is the simplest possible thing that will actually make the test pass?
Yay.
I think we're green, and that means commit and integrate.
What is this?
Add a case for 1 for the number 1.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Yay. Logging in. Let's all see your password.
1, 2, 3 password.
You can not share your screen for this if you want.
Did that work?
No.
Oh, okay. Let's do it this way.
It's been a long time since I've actually used a password, not an SSH key.
Yep. There we go. Done.
Yay.
Cannot steal screen share page, so if you could please stop sharing.
Yeah.
So that was the simplest possible. We went from red to green, and now we rotate.
Oh, hey, look, it's here.
Yay.
We're doing you-
Yay. So run your test, please.
Write a new test.
Run your tests, please.
Oh, run tests. Okay.
All right, let's go up on line 10. We're going to rename that. Yeah, and it's just going to be should return string 1 for int 1.
You said line 10, so it's 2.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, should return string 2 for int 2.
Okay.
All right, let's commit that.
Is that a good enough commit?
Yes.
Danny, your comment, the inconsistent white spaces drive me a little crazy. I think that's the nice thing about this is by by rotating every small change, sometimes you leave the crazy things and you're like, I have to do this rotation. Which is kind of it's a funny way of doing it. Feels very weird.
See anything else but that.
What can I do?
I would actually, I think, want to actually make the refactoring on the production code to just return, what is it, int of? I'm remembering Java, was it int that parse? No. Want to,
I think it's string value of.
yeah, there it is. Yep. So return string that value of, yep. Even though there's more test refactors there, but you want to return on line 5. Ready.
So should we see that pass? Okay.
Let's commit.
Yay. It's very important to say yay every time the test pass.
Stand up, celebrate, run around the chair.
Oh,
There's
and
no bar
And,
to admire.
and when you have a failing test that you want to have.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we automate that at the A? I like things that repeat to automate.
Oh, that's a great idea.
terrible idea. It's about celebration, not it's about collectively saying yay together, not hearing something say yay. Surely.
Zoom doesn't do well with the collective yay, though.
So yeah, okay, we'll go on. How about add a new test, please? Okay, and before you change the name, I want you to change the assert to say fizz and change that to a 3. Okay, now we can change the name, should return fizz for number 3, whatever, for int 3. Thank you. Yay. Oh, that's a failing test. So if input equals 3, then return the fizz.
Oh,
Bad AI.
Hooray. I know
That's
it wants to
AI,
try and
bad.
help.
it does.
Which, mind you, as a practice, Steve found that if we change instead of doing fizz buzz, if we do whatever, a buffalo melon something, like change it, the AI tends to kind of not know exactly what you're doing anymore and gives you less of a less of a finished product and more of just a suggestion.
Good for a commit message.
Yes, thank you.
Kody, would you rather questions and observations come at the end of this?
Yeah, right after this, we're
program
gonna
thing?
have a how we feeling about this. We're gonna go
Yeah,
just a little
right.
bit longer here. So I think now too, I think we've done a couple rotations. When we go from red to green, we'll rotate, but at least for refactors, we can maybe batch a couple refactors up, which is typically what we did anyway. Now that we've seen that deliberately.
So to further that along, let's go ahead and just add the next case for 6. So I guess make a new test exactly like the third one, except for 6.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I love the IDE. It's like, hey, can't compile. I'm going to jump back there.
This is why pairing with Paige is fun.
All right, sorry. Let me go down and turn off the auto magic run.
I think you need to change the 6. Change that to 6, and then the test name to 6. Yep.
Yay.
All right, and the fix?
Change the if statement to be modulus of 3.
Seems like a giant jump, but okay.
Oh, okay. We'll add a second if. We can add a second if. That's okay.
It's up to you. You're the. Where did it go? No, it's not that. I'll just do it that way. Hooray!
Yay.
Is it like
The
that? I
word
don't-
"and" is in there.
Yes.
Tells me that I even jumped the gun.
No, that's totally. I mean,
Is
Again,
that
this is
really
gonna
a
happen, right?
refactor?
Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, it was an ad. You're not triangulating at that stage.
It's more of breaking the simplest possible. Simplest possible there would have been if input equals 3 or equals 6.
Mhm. Pilot for the brain is hard. What's next?
Yeah, we could copy the test and let's return buzz for 5.
Yay.
All right, and go ahead and put if input equals 5. And return buzz.
Catching myself with the double quotes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hooray!
Much React.
JavaScript with that. I always do that too. Or some languages just allowed single quotes.
Yeah, Ruby single quotes doesn't matter either.
Yep.
Just a commit. Right, it's not a refactor, it's a new functionality, so it feels like it should be a commit.
Yep.
Cool. So git push. And I think here, just for the sake of time, and also just to prove that the problem is the lie, we're not going to solve the rest of the problem.
But
yeah, see,
but-
everybody wants to see the full FizzBuzz
Problem
implementation.
is the lie.
Go
Yeah.
ask the AI overlords because they'll share it with you.
but
All right.
I just changed my theme to dark mode to make it more comfortable for
And I think
others.
there's a conversation in there about how when you collaborate remotely, you'll do things like that. You'll become, even when this is my computer and that's your computer, we'll try to homogenize a few things just to make it easier. So I want to mostly open this up now for a discussion. We saw this in person. What do we think? Is this crazy different? Is this not? Does it suck? What are some thoughts?
This is how I work. I think I work pretty similarly to you, Kody, making all these small commits, and like refactoring is always a separate commit and so on. But seeing it being done for FizzBuzz is kind of excruciating. And but you're obviously doing it as an example. And I've been thinking about like, would I do, if I was doing FizzBuzz like professionally, would I do this? And I probably would, but I guess the main thing I noticed was that there wasn't really a discussion about like what you're gonna do, like the math of the thing. And I often feel sometimes when I code and when I see other people code, they're kind of just going. It turned into this kind of brute force thing. Just okay, now we'll do this. Now we'll do this. Like we'll get there. There's not really a kind of direction really. It reminds me of when I was traveling around Europe with eight of us on trains back in the early 90s, and we would get out, we had no idea what was going on in town, and we would end up like trying to make a consensus decision on every street corner about literally which way we were going to go rather than having a plan, which sometimes isn't a problem, and sometimes you can't really have a plan because you just don't know how to solve the problem. But something like this is a simple math problem. That's my observation.
Yeah, the thing to note here too is Paige and Adam have paired quite a bit, so they have that established trust in whatever Paige tells me to go. I trust that it's going to be the right way. FizzBuzz is so simple that yeah, there's not a ton of maybe design talk or are we going the right way? That definitely changes as the problem gets more complex. But I still think this goes back to we discover the work by doing the work. So even sometimes, like, yeah, if we find ourselves at every street corner, no, we got to go that way. No, we got to go that way. Sometimes it's better to say, let's just pick a direction. Let's see where it goes.
That's a
Let's
good point, actually. Yeah, we didn't have that trust. I guess if the smaller group you have, the more you can build up that trust, and the more that like making a decision in every street corner is actually fine. So my example is kind of showing how yeah, it's not a good example, really.
I think this also gets to the point with Kody throwing spaghetti against the wall. Is whenever you're doing ensemble, even with an ensemble that has worked well together many days, months, weeks, years, whatever, there's always a problem that will come up that it's like, well, Kody thinks it should be done this way. Paige thinks it should be done this way, and I think it should be done a different way. We spend the quick 5 minutes to have a discussion about it, and we also know what's the simplest thing that we can do. Do we split up, all three of us try something, come back in 5 minutes and see who's gotten the furthest? Or do we just pick one and do the all-powerful get reset hard if it's not the right way, if it doesn't feel right?
And many times we'll have the three-pronged approach. We pick one and then we're like, yeah, that's all right. This works.
Good
And
enough.
then the three people that were, the two other people that didn't get their way, they're like, yeah, it's fine.
I'll get mine next time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think by working in small steps, at least we know we're not going down this crazy, scary road. We're taking small. So if we are getting that feedback, so if it is something we don't like, that first commit or maybe first two commits that we do, we're like, you know what? Actually, this does feel bad. I don't like where this is going. I think by working in small steps, you start to get, not only are you getting feedback that the system isn't breaking, but you're also getting feedback, do I like where we're going? And I've definitely been like, no. you get revert those two commits and we start from scratch.
This is a slight distraction, Toby, but you mentioned, doing FizzBuzz like this, it makes you feel uncomfortable, or it doesn't feel right. To me, my suggestion to developers is to find one code kata that's quick and simple that you can practice perfectly and strive to do it as perfectly as possible technique-wise. And so to me, that's FizzBuzz. And so when I'm doing FizzBuzz, it's a Zen state for me of, okay, I'm an Olympic runner. These are my stretches that I do and my pre-race exercise to get to Kody. And so it gets me into that mindset. So find that happy place, and it's a great tool to do.
Totally. I think I get that practice from going into some open source project and just doing a little bit of refactoring. I guess it's deliberate practice, but I'm actually helping people out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I had another observation, Kody, but it might be better for later. But I was thinking about like the reasons why people don't do this stuff, because like people have been banging on about most of what you're talking about since the last century. The XP book, I think the first one was published in 1999. And I was thinking about like why so many people don't do these things, but in particular, why people might not want to do what I just saw.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the words I came up with was dainty. Like you're making all these like small, delicate, dainty little commits, and it's not very macho. It's a bit girly. And there's you guys talking about beer and gaming and everything, there's a bit of a like, I know I just want to go all night and just like make this massive commit, and it's just going to be this badass thing, and then I'm going to go to the gym and just lift this massive weight once or twice, and then that'll be great. Whereas actually, what's better all around, just with the small steps on the ladder, is what you've been doing. But it's it just requires. I was looking at Larry Wall's famous "The Pearl Guy" thing about
Okay.
the qualities in a programmer: laziness, impatience, and hubris. You need none of those things to do what I just saw.
I would say, yeah, it kind of goes back to the discipline part. I would say there's a bit of it, maybe not with laziness, but I didn't touch upon maybe some of the benefits of working in small steps completely. But one of them is that we work in a way where we're very interruptible. Every single one of these small steps. I mean, we even saw it in person, right? Because there was some discussions that happened as Adam and Paige were like getting the commit ready and pushed it. We had a small discussion beforehand that interrupted their flow, but we could have deployed the application at that point in time. We could have stepped away. We could have, if it's Friday and it's 5 p.m., we could have pushed the code and just said, okay, we're good. We're going to come back to this Monday.
I would say it does incorporate laziness, because how many times are you interrupted and it takes you extra time and effort to get back into flow? If you're not doing these small steps, you waste that time. And then if you're not doing those small steps and you go down the wrong path, the backing out of those steps takes more time. I mean, so to me, the laziness part of that, this fits in with lazy. It's smart lazy.
Yeah, I would have called enlightened laziness.
Yeah.
It's less thinking too. I think that's actually how I describe it, as laziness, right? Because I do the refactor. Oh, let's commit. I don't have to think. I think that's the thing we notice with the how this deliberate practice of trunk based ping pong emerged, was we were constantly being like, when do we integrate? When do we integrate? And now that's less of a question. Oh, it's green and we made a change. We should integrate. It's green and we made a change. We should integrate. It's way easier to follow that. Dan, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm curious because it looks like trunk branch, you name it this way, and it replaces the main or master, whatever people use, right?
Yeah.
So I joined a new company, right? And there's like millions of lines of codes, hundreds of developers, everything's in master, but the CI gates take 1 hour, right? Lots of end-to-end tests. How do you make that switch? Because I can't just go and use trunk-based development unless it's in a smaller team, and then we still have to do a PR to the master branch, which reduces some of the churn, right? Because let's say we own some area, sub-area of the whole code, might still work, but I'm wondering if you had experiences there, or any of you, how that transition happened.
Yeah, so I think the main thing really is you don't have this. You might not have the safety nets in place to make a change and know that it didn't break anything. However, at least going back to how micro commits and trunk base works for me is, if we're talking about an 8-line change that maybe is, oh, I extracted a method from this place to this place, especially if it's a provable refactoring where I use the IDE to do it, or automated refactoring, I should say. We understand the risk that might be involved with deploying this a lot better than a big giant 15 to 1600 long PR, right?
Yeah, but it's to me, it's not like I cannot push to master or every 5 minutes, because the validation of a change takes an hour, right? The way things are currently set up, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to best arrange the branches, and if there's one way that works better for trunk-based development as an additional branch, because I can't switch the master to be trunk-based right now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
So for me, if you can't switch to trunk-based, one trunk-based development, going in and finding a way to optimize for as few branches as possible, and highlighting as many people working on a branch as possible. And then if a branch is there, making it as short-lived as possible.
Yeah, I could imagine we could, have, let's say, a collective, like with Fast, on a team, and there's 5 teams, and that team works for a day, and then makes maybe a PR and merges to master at the end of the day, because it's just 1 hour of hit after everyone goes home, let's say, right? Person comes in, merges it in when it's good, or auto merges, right? Yeah, cool, thanks.
I work in a context where merging into trunk takes hours, and I like safe micro commits. So I've done a lot of trying to find that in between. How do I apply that in this context? So I still find the micro commits useful. I find them maybe more useful in this context than I would if CI was fast. I make a branch, I make tiny safe micro commits in there, and then typically at the end of the day, merge that into trunk. And I'm going about 5 times as fast as the average engineer in my organization by doing that, because they usually are going weekly into trunk. And the fact that I was doing small safe commits means I'm much more likely to succeed at getting through any code review requirements and getting through the CI validation and having that go smoothly because I was doing small safe the entire time. So it's hugely beneficial in that context. The other thing that I do, and maybe this is just a me thing, is opportunistic refactoring. I was reading something, aha, I have an idea, rename that variable, send it into the pipeline, get back to what I was doing. It's not really related to the work at hand, or at least not like closely related to it. And I just put it in the queue. And if it takes hours or whatever, that's okay. And maybe in a day I send 10 of them and only 8 of them make it. And that's okay too. The cost was so low that the ROI is definitely there. So I think these things fit in well in that context, even though I don't really like being in that context.
It's the best way to deal with living in that context. Because I've been in there before too, before I knew what micro commits were. I would have, like you're saying, the branch for the day, and I would be working in micro commits. But then when I actually went to integrate, I squashed them and then brought them into main, which I don't like now, but that did work.
Yeah, so commits is different than actually pushing some change that you chose, or whether individually or as a block to through CI with the gates, right? To share with a bigger group. I was trying, like, I thought that this was really, let's have fewer branches, right? And if that doesn't mean fewer commits or more commits, that's irrelevant. So I just want to figure out how to have fewer branches, but it requires everyone working the same way, pretty much like for everything else, right? And having that code that's fast, that helps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's supported by all those other practices like faster CI, software architecture that makes it less likely that parallel work is going to conflict.
Yeah, fast test.
Or,
Yeah, that's something we can do when we start as crafters from the very beginning, and everything grows like that. But when people change jobs, like I did a couple months ago, it's always an existing state. And how do I use the knowledge and these new techniques with the existing situation? Because people made decisions based on what they knew, what best and whatever, right? And it created a body of tests, which like currently are slow, for example, right? Because there's more end-to-end tests versus unit tests. And even if we work differently, I still need to deal with that situation.
I think going back to at least the one thing I want people to get out of this talk is ask yourself that question. How can we make it smaller? So it's not about how small can we go? It's about I'm at a current state of an organization or a structure or a team. How can we make our changes smaller? Just smaller than they are now. And just because I know people are saying they got to bail, I want to just get to the end and then we'll open up just for regular QA. Is that okay? Actually, I don't think I have any. Yeah, I was just going to say that to me, this trunk-based ping pong, it creates this incentivized, again, I was talking about discipline a lot throughout the talk. I think that practice in particular creates this incentive for us to work in small steps while we're working collaboratively. I think that's super powerful. So I just want folks, if you haven't tried this technique, try it out with your teams, check out the blog, and let me know what you think. Let me know what happens because of it.
Kody, I just want to give a quick to in the moment when it is that small, it feels or can feel very familiar to the, what is it, the test commit revert?
Yes.
It can feel very close to that, while still getting the benefits of mobbing and pairing and collaborative programming. So if you're a fan of TCR, it could be an intriguing thing to try.
And there's ways
Excellent.
too of lowering the cost of rotation. We just did Zoom screen share because that's what, again, the context that this practice was born out of, that's what we've done. But there's so many better tools for maybe rotating quicker. And then it'd be great having that shared TCR environment where it automatically prompts you to commit every time you save when there's a change. But again, just wanted to say thank you, everybody. Here's a link to all the references and slides and things. Feel free to message me about any of this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. But thank you for joining. And now we can go to Q&A or any other stuff we want to talk about.
I wanted to drop something in real quick. Just thank you very much, Kody. Thank you, appreciate it. I wanted to talk about the upcoming stuff before everybody has to split. Here Tuesday, June 11th, we are back in person again at Bellevue College. We're going to do some collaborative programming practice, and it's really excellent to be in person. We're doing more of a focused smaller steps type of thing. So please join us. And then next month, our big talk is on the 27th. And that is talk about psychological safety that I heard a guy, his name is Jitesh. Jitesh. Oh, I don't have it right in front of me, darn it. But it was a fabulous talk. He works at IBM in the UK and we did a great job. June 27th. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Kody. It was great.
Thank you, Kody. Awesome.
Yeah, also just not as an aside, but somebody had their Todd, you had your hand up for a long time, and sorry we never got to you. What can we answer your question or keep going with
Yeah,
it?
it was so long. It was so long.
I'm sorry, Todd.
No,
I saw people were
no, I'm
dropping. I was
joking.
like, I wanted to close it before we got back, so I apologize.
No, I was going to ask Jay, but I'll ask. So Jay had talked about how he's doing these super small commits and just cranking out a ton of stuff in an environment where we don't have mobbing and we're doing PR reviews. What would be your suggestion there? Because the PR reviews end up taking time. So if I do 20 small commits or if I do one large commit, not arguing for that, but I still have to wait X hours for a PR review or maybe even overnight. And that really, I see people laughing. Yeah.
No, the pain is real. The pain is
Yeah,
real.
no, it is. Yeah. What's your suggestion in that environment as an individual? Because if I want to move the group toward what you're talking about, I've got to take small steps and show things that are successful that move toward that. Any suggestions for that environment?
Are you just doing individual IC programming, or are you doing pairing and ensemble as well?
Old school, all individual. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the ways to do it is say, hey, if I can get a pair or an ensemble, can we not do PRs?
Or even, if you work in a place where they're sort of required for legal record or whatever, if you're pairing or mobbing, you can immediately create the PR and approve it, right? Because you're not going to let the bad stuff go into the code as you're working collaboratively.
Yeah. I've tried
what you said. Just as an FYI, SOX 2 compliance does not require a PR review. It requires 2 pairs of eyes on the code, and pairing or ensemble meets that requirement.
Do you know if FedRAMP is the same?
What was it?
FedRAMP or one of the ISO standards that's equivalent to SOC 2 in Europe, or anyone knows? Okay, never mind it.
Yeah, to that one, we use the co-author to go around the ISO requirement. If you in a commit, you can put a second author, and that is peer reviewed on the commit.
Nice.
I've done that before as well. And I think the other thing to add is there's ways if folks aren't used to pairing or maybe are allergic to the word, there's ways of saying, oh, hey, I could use some help with this thing. And maybe the most susceptible to collaborating person on your team, you're like, hey, can you come help me for a little bit? Because people love to help others. So if you put yourself in that vulnerable state, you can start to introduce pairing into a team. And the other thing I would say is you can be a little sadistic too and raise PRs with lots of tiny, small commits. And people will get very mad and annoyed with you. And then you'll start talking about, well, this would be a lot quicker if folks were just working with me. And these are two things that I've done before. So if you want to talk about them, let me know.
I started chuckling, right? It's like, oh, if I make a commit, just more PRs then. One commit is one PR. Like, if things are painful, we do it more often, right? That's how we got to continuous deployment. I mean,
Yep.
if PRs are painful, let's just make them more, and then we'll figure out how to get rid of them. And that would be an interesting approach if you feel like disrupting your team a lot.
I'm going to link, actually, there was plugging the recorded talks for this meetup. Dragon had a great talk called Async Code Reviews Are Killing Your Company's Throughput.
Yep.
He talks about, there's a slide in there that I actually kind of want to reference, which is, I think it goes through how many comments are on the PRs based on the size. And that's one big part of this too. Like, by having smaller PRs, things that are, I think it was like within 100 lines, there's way more comments, which means there's more collaboration. The longer it gets, that's where you get that LGTM looks good to me. Good. We'll push it through.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.